Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Ask Sibs. And it's a big one. It's going to be a big one today. I've obviously had a pretty short haircut, not the reason that the episode is going to be big, but maybe a sign of some change around some of the content. Obviously, we're episode 21. For a lot of my blogging life, there's obviously been a very personal, experiential part of it, which will continue. And I always talk about that intersection of disability, social media marketing, and entrepreneurship. So again, all of that carries on. But ever since I started doing the lives, particularly with Purple Goat, really trying to innovate and disrupt positively in the advertising and marketing industry, I really wanted to be able to start to talk about, brands out there that are doing good stuff, that, I don't want to say doing bad stuff, but just in terms of where there's areas for potential improvement. And I think, I've been finding my voice. I think it's been just to go in a more soft and gentle around, entrepreneurship and social media influence has been really great to share that value and that knowledge and experience I've picked up over the past 10 to 15 years. But really, we launched in April with Purple Goat. I've spoke to hundreds and hundreds of different brands. As you know, Purple Goat itself is doing really well. We're, got a lot of clients at the moment and doing some really cool campaigns. We've got a campaign going live with Tesco this week, which is really exciting. So I guess it's fair to say that I've, upskilled on a lot of things, but also just had more experience with these big multinational brands. And so I feel more and more able and capable to speak to this area more confidently. So the last couple of days, there's been a couple of adverts that have popped up from very well-known brands. I think more on my LinkedIn has been some actual deeper, thoughts and opinions and conversations. I can't remember. I think I shared some of them on other social platforms, but LinkedIn is where I've definitely shared both of these examples. So the first one is the Flyease sort of technology, and it's basically where the shoe, I say the shoe because the recent advert is for a trainer, but last summer we actually spoke to Nike around the football boot, which has the Flyease. So my point is that the technology is, to be used in different types of shoes, and the two use cases I'm aware of is the football boot and then more recently the trainer. And for me, it's kicked up some really interesting thoughts. So first and foremost, it's definitely not coming at a critical angle to Nike. I've always been a very big believer in, if we look at the history of disability and inclusion, or more in the past exclusion, there's obviously points that were not necessarily positive, and we have to acknowledge the past and some of the things that were not as they should be. But equally, I think that it's about bridging gaps, and it's bringing brands and disabled people together to find solutions that are mutually beneficial. So I'm never coming at this in a sort of angry, rowdy way. But I definitely, looking at this particular example of the Flyease, I think that the product is for everyone, right? So it's got this use case, if you like, that people with certain disabilities benefit from, from it, where actually there's a distinct lack of adapted wear for disabled people. So the product has this technology that's good for lots of disabled people, but it's also beneficial for everybody. And something I've talked about before, like Siri was apparently developed around a use case of disability and disabled people, but everybody uses Siri. So I think that the actual product is for everyone, and that's brilliant. We don't have to point and sort of create silos and exclusions around different communities. The product is for everyone. I think also Nike's brand is very much that whoever you are, whatever you do, whatever you believe, you can do it, just do it, right? And so the branding of Nike is very much like, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, you can still get out there and live your dreams and be successful. And those of you know that I wrote a book of my travel sort of memoir called Everything is Possible. So that absolutely resonates with me. I totally love the Nike brand and all that it stands for. I suppose where I sort of started to feel there was an opportunity, and I'm using that word because I want it to be a positive, constructive conversation, is very much about when we look at modern marketing, digital marketing, social media, influencer, you generally need the different use cases to tell the story of why a product and why a brand is good. It's sort of, features and benefits. If we're getting now into the nitty gritty of sales and advertising and marketing, it just makes sense that you would have more disabled people creating content about the fact that this technology is useful for disabled people and help spread that message within a sort of disability culture. Now, that doesn't mean that the product is only for disabled people or the brand is only for disabled people, but the storytelling is always far, far more powerful. You just have to look at the GOAT agency, VaynerMedia, these sort of pioneers in digital marketing. That's all they talk about, that you have niche content to niche audiences at scale. So just to draw a little line around the Nike example, lots of positivities about the fact that there's the technology, the fact that the brand is still for everybody, and then just some suggestions and recommendations that I think it would carry further deeper into the disabled community, where there's sort of the disability pride. And even when we look at language of disability, in America, it's person first, it's person with disability. In the UK, we say disabled people because we're disabled by barriers of the social model. And so even where the language gets a little bit awkward, you get some American influencers and you target that, or target that content to an American audience. And likewise, you get British disabled people. And again, you'd have someone with cerebral palsy talking about the benefit for them, whereas I would benefit from the technology because my personal care assistants would be able to put the shoes on me more easily and it wouldn't hurt my foot. And I've got a neuromuscular disability. So it's actually, I'm just talking about this separate to disability. It's more about generally in marketing, you have niche content to niche audiences at scale. But I sometimes feel that that's not happening enough with disabled influencers and disabled consumers and the disabled audience. And there was two articles I shared on LinkedIn. One was more even talking about why the fact the technology was designed with a disabled person, almost the creation of the product had disability at the heart of it, that we should speak more about that as a really positive, amazing sort of disabled people are valuable. We're contributing positively. So I think that there's the narrative for everybody to hear disability in a more positive light. But then there's just the products for everyone, the brands for everyone, but actually having disabled talent within very, very specific sort of segments from the marketing perspective will actually get more brand awareness, more engagement, and more sales on a pure business level. And then the other example that came up on my feed today was Toyota. And I believe it was for the Super Bowl ad. Forgive me if I got that a bit wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the Super Bowl ad. And obviously Toyota do a lot around the Paralympics. They're a Paralympic sponsor. So there's always going to be a narrative to do with Paralympians, which we, in the context of Toyota sponsoring the Paralympics, we understand. But just a few general thoughts as a disabled person, that we love the fact that the Paralympics in 2012 put disability on the map, more positive narrative, more general exposure to the world. It was all really, 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 really brilliant. But over time, it got a little bit tiring where society kept saying to disabled people, come on, you can be a Paralympian. And not every disabled person wants to be a Paralympian, right? And also, I think and this is from a very critical angle, I'm not sure I totally agree with this, but some people were saying that the advert was just looking at the point of view that the disabled person was adopted, and that the way that ended up being how they almost were validated once they became a Paralympian. Now, maybe that's a bit too negative and too loaded. I'm not sure if I agree with that. But I think, and again, the story that Toyota told was a true story. And if the story is true, then, we can't judge or criticize it because it's real and it happened. But something that Sophie Morgan said on that LinkedIn thread, again, if you haven't, feel free to look on my LinkedIn feed at all these articles and all the comments. It's been a really fascinating few days with really interesting debates. For me, I'm really respectful for all the different opinions. I'm forming my own opinion. I don't yet have a massively this is the answer, this has to be the only answer. I think the world is more nuanced and subtle, and it's about conversations and it's about education. And I think, Nike and Toyota obviously had lots of the best intentions. I think most of it worked and resonated well, by the way. But yeah, to the Toyota example, I definitely think that we want to start talking about stories that aren't just about disability in that adopted sense, that, that there sort of that you can imagine how that can send a signal to the world that this disabled child wasn't wanted by their parents. And thank God there are these amazing parents that adopt and take on those horrible situations when they happen. But I think to really hit home what I'm trying to articulate is that this isn't the everyday story of disability. There are lots of disabled people whose parents love them dearly for who they are. There are lots of disabled people that don't become Paralympians but are equally valuable to society as teachers, as doctors, as executives in all sorts of businesses, as volunteers, as parents themselves. And I just feel like that's the bit we're missing. Where are the everyday stories of disabled people, and not to keep having this very overly dramatized triumph over tragedy narrative? And I know that a lot of disabled people agree with this point I'm making now. And I also know that a lot of disabled people are over the moon that there is now adaptive footwear and that Nike and Toyota are actually finally speaking about disability in their marketing, full stop. So it's not binary. It's not to have a go at anyone, but it's also to say that we can do it better and eventually we can do it right. And the only way that happens is when we have these conversations and the brands and disabled consumers get together and speak about it. And it's great that I'm sure Nike and Toyota and other brands, have got some disabled staff members and they've got disability consultants. That's fantastic, right? More of that, the merrier. But also let's do some bigger stuff like surveys and focus groups and, interviews, and really understand what is it the 1.3 billion disabled consumers feel and want and need and experience every day. And I think that's the opportunity. It's not to criticize things, it's to say there's so much more we can do. And it's exciting that brands are waking up to that and starting to do that. So definitely been brewing up, getting on my soapbox on this. And I'm really, really glad that, I feel more clear in my own mind of the key talking points, but definitely not saying that I have answers. I think what I and Purple Go are bringing is a platform or a environment really for creating solutions together. And that's what I stand for. And I think that's important for me to get more clarity, to be able to explain that more and more clear in lots of other content in the future, that it's about bridging gaps, it's about conversations, education, innovation, all about being solutions oriented. So I think that's enough said on that one for one video. Marnie said a few comments. I'm going to bring Marnie in. She said, my Nike trainers arrived today, with hands up. They're not the Flyes, but Air Max, with the same kind of idea how they go on. So as I mentioned, I've got a neuromuscular disability. Marnie has the same. We've both got spinal muscular atrophy. And so Marnie has that same experience that I do, that, some trainers are quite hard to get our feet in, or when personal assistants are putting our feet into the shoe for us. And we've got full, my feet are actually quite sensitive. I'm not paralyzed, but they're quite, because I don't walk on them, they're more sensitive than maybe sort of a non-disabled person's. And so my point is that, it can be a bit painful or a bit awkward having my feet put in a shoe. So, that's obviously what Marnie's saying, that she's found the Air Max to be really beneficial for her particular example. So, hey, why don't we get Marnie to create a video about how her Air Max shoes are beneficial with a personal care assistant helping her put them on, and they're more comfortable and they do the job, because there's lots and lots of other people like me and Marnie that don't even know about that solution, right? So that's a perfect kind of use case of what I'm banging on about today. Influencer marketing basically means having the individual everyday people that can create the content and get it out to very specific audiences. Marnie also says, my nan loved the idea of the flyees. She's 80 and struggles bending down to put shoes on. She says they would make life so much easier for her. Exactly. So that's the other use case, right? Someone that's not disabled, but just older. And that there could be some really powerful videos. And I think one of the criticisms I heard is the video of the flyees was a person that had no, so that they may have had a disability, because we know there's hidden disabilities, right? But there was no apparent disability. It was a very sort of sprightly person walking into the shoe. But, like as Marnie said, we're in a wheelchair, or there's, an older person putting the shoe on, would just give that very everyday experience. And again, I'm sure the Nike brand people would tell me, that they're generally very much about that kind of content that's very slick and very aspirational and all that good stuff. I get it completely. I'm just saying that maybe it's a point about where in advertising, it doesn't always have to be about perfection and that sort of physical ability, but it could also be about the everyday user, the everyday story. So thanks, Marnie, for sharing your personal use case and your nan's use case. Also, when I talked about the Paralympics, Marnie said the Paralympic 2012 adverts for Jack Whitehall were absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Marnie. And I would just like disabled people to be included in adverts like everyone else. Not only if the focus of the advert is disability, just have disabled people in the advert and normalize disability representation. Amen to that, sister, right? I totally agree. And as we know at Purple Goat, we've talked a lot about the statistic. 0.06% of adverts feature disability, even though 22% of the world's population has a disability. Percentages, numbers can be varied, obviously, blah, 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 blah. But I've heard 15%, I've heard 20%, I've heard 22%. It's a lot of people. It's 1.3 billion people. So let's get more disabled people in adverts and in TV and in film, as I've talked about a previous episode, just generally because it's the right thing to do. And if you're a brand, it's the business sense as well. And Marnie said about, I'm down for that. We'll film putting them on. So there we go. We've got some good, authentic, genuine content of storytelling going on from Marnie now. Wow, that was a rant. I've been wanting to get that out for quite a few days. But yeah, very mindful that everyone has their own opinion and perspective, quite rightly. And it's not binary. But I really hope by putting this sort of content out, it just shakes people up to, maybe disabled people not to get so militant and critical of brands, to support the brands on this journey to inclusion, but also for brands to actually realize that, it's great to include disability or a product that can benefit disabled people. But there's a lot of different types of disabilities. There's a lot of cultural nuances. And so, yeah, let's work together. I'm saying that not just as Purple Goat, but just more in the community sense, like speak to disabled people about what we want. And you'll get better results as a business at the outcome of that. And Marnie's saying, and breathe. It was so needed, though, to highlight these issues. Absolutely, Marnie. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts as well if you watch this later in the day. Maybe there's some things I can break down in shorter bite-sized pieces rather than one long rant. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, and I'd be happy to go into more depth and have more discussions about this, because this is just the beginning of it, and it's really, really exciting as well. All right, so thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.